If you've brought a Bible with you, we're going to be looking at Luke's Gospel, chapter 8, where Jesus calms the storm. One day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." So they got into the boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down the lake, so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples woke him and said, "Master, Master, we're going down." He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters, and the storm subsided, and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked his disciples. In fear and astonishment, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." What I think we're going to be looking at tonight is Discipleship 101. This is reception class kind of discipleship. This is early in their journey with him, and they're going to learn some kind of basic stuff. But I don't know if you've ever been in a storm at sea where really it was really being tossed about. I was thinking about it. I don't think I have. The worst I ever had was travelling from northern France back into Portsmouth, I think it was Portsmouth or Plymouth, on a ship where the regulars would wait 12 hours for the next one rather than go on that one, because this particular ship was known to be unstable. It rocked and rolled a little bit. And I think I was about, we just left the harbour mouth and I felt unwell. And we've got another 6 hours of this to go. And I've never prayed the Lord's Prayer so many times over and over again. But it wasn't really that bad. It was just kind of tossing about and made me feel unwell. But I've certainly witnessed from the land some bad storms. And there's something about a storm, something about when the sea is kind of enraged that way, that shows how fragile we really are. And of course, particularly in this journey, think my journey when we were 3 hours out, it's 3 hours back or 3 hours that way. And that's a long time. You can spend that's a long time to be thinking, my goodness, if it really gets bad now, I am in a bad way. This whole account of Jesus with his disciples, of course, is set in a storm. Four of them, at least four of them, made their living on this lake. They knew exactly how it worked, and they knew exactly what to do, and they knew exactly how dangerous it was. And so they weren't ignorant of the situation. They knew how to take in the sails, how much sail they needed to take in, which way, direction the boat had to face. My friend's a sailor, and he tells me all about this kind of stuff. As you don't necessarily take all the sail in. You keep some, so you have some momentum, so you can turn, so you face the waves. You don't want waves coming across sideways. They would have been aware of all of this. Where they are on Lake Galilee is the actual geography. I'll just slow down and say that word properly. The geography means that the wind can come down the valley and a storm can brew up quite quickly. And even though it's an inland lake, it's a big inland lake, and so it can become quite rough. And of course, they're not in an ocean-going liner. They are in a little boat. It's not a big boat they're in, it's a little boat. Archaeologists have found one dated from this time, and they're not massive. They're quite shallow-sided boats that they use for fishing, because that's what they're doing. They're fishermen. And so they know exactly what to do, how much sail to bring in, which direction. And of course, they also know that you bail out like a madman, because water in the boat is never good. Water is outside the boat, good. Water inside the boat, very bad. Lots of water, and that's called swamped, which is the word they use there, is very, very bad. So you chuck it out as quickly as you can. So at least four of them, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, are experienced on the lake. They're experienced in navigating this water and these ships. And so I'm imagining they've done all of that. They've taken in the right amount of sail, they're heading in the right direction, they're bailing out for all they're worth, and they're not getting anywhere. This thing, they are still being swamped. At this point, because Jesus has gone to sleep, which is incredibly helpful. I'd have loved to have done that on my little journey, but I just couldn't manage sleep. I was just concentrating on not being sick. But he is so relaxed and chilled out, he's gone to sleep. Now remember, he's a carpenter. And as far as I know, they don't know anything about sailing in carpentry. That's not how you learn. And so the carpenter in the back of the boat is asleep. This is the point when they raise him. They wake him up. The interesting question is, why do they wake him up then? What is the point of waking him up? I don't think they thought he could do anything. I'm going to suggest as you read this account, there's no evidence that they thought that he'd be good at bailing out, that he would know anything about sails or which direction to go in, or could do anything else. I think they've woken him up because they think they're going to drown, or they think they're going to go in the water, which won't be good. That probably won't end well. And they don't want him to go over the side to sleep. They want to wake him up to tell him, now you have a look at it and see what you think. I don't think there's any evidence there that they think he can particularly help in this situation they find themselves in. But they don't want him to go in the water asleep. And so they go and they wake him up. Perhaps they just wanted to ask him, could he swim? They certainly didn't expect what came next, because they're astonished by it. Jesus gets up and he tells off the wind and he tells off the waves. And he said to him, that's enough. And all is quiet. Do you remember King Canute? If you're from England, then perhaps you've heard the story of King Canute, the king who wanted to prove that he was only human, where he stood and told the waves to stop, and then they kind of lap over his feet, and they realize that he's only a king. A king is only another human being with more responsibility. This king can actually stop the wind and the waves. And all is calm. They're amazed. He even commands the weather. We often joke about it when we've got an event and people know I'm a vicar. They say, well, can you have a word with your governor about getting us sunshine? It's not that daft. He can do that if he really wants to. He can command the weather. But then he turns to them and he asks them what I'm going to suggest appears to me to be an unfair question. Where's your faith, he says. Is that a reasonable question to ask these people? Remember, they're experts in where they are. They're not ignorant of the situation they find themselves in. I've sailed with my friend. I haven't got a clue what's going on. Not the faintest clue. I'm normally in charge of the bar. That's what they normally put me in charge of. I bring the beers out of the fridge and bring them up onto the top, and then we drink the beer that I brought up. That's my job. My friend does the sail trimming and which direction we're heading in and all that kind of stuff, and keeping on the depth and all that kind of... I don't know any of that. These men knew exactly the situation they're in. They knew exactly how dangerous it was. And Jesus turns to them and says, where is your faith? They didn't know he could do that stuff. They've not been with him very long. He's healed some sick. He's done some amazing stuff. But they didn't know he could do that because they'd never seen him do it. I don't think, actually, he is being unfair. I think this is discipleship 101. This is reception class discipleship. I'm not suggesting they did the wrong things. What I'm going to suggest is they did it in the wrong order. Yes, you do need to trim the sails. Yes, you do need to turn the boat into the waves. Yes, you do need to bail out for all you're worth. But what they did, of course, is after they tried everything else, when everything else had failed, then they went and got Jesus. That shows an absence of faith. They got things in the wrong order. What they should have done is gone to him first and then did all those other things. Disciples would face more storms, actual and in life. There's more of that to come. And what he is trying to teach them, and by teaching them as we have received this, he is also teaching us, is that they should call on him sooner. Don't try everything else first, and when none of that works, then go to the king. What he's saying to them is, go to him first. Even if you don't think he's aware, if it seems like he's asleep, then go and wake him up and draw him into this situation. We have different ideas of what the Christian faith is going to do for us. Some people seem to give me the impression that if they become a Christian, then everything will be fine, that life will be happy, whatever happiness means, that they'll have no more trouble because God is on their side. And I think we're missing something of what faith is actually all about. We will all face storms in our lives, I'm sure of it, of different degrees, but we will all have days that don't work as well as other days. Some of us will experience suffering. None of that comes in opposition to what Jesus teaches. What is the difference between me having faith and me not having faith is I've got some idea now of how to weather that storm. I've got a new understanding of suffering and what all of that means. And this, I think, lies at the heart of what was going on that day on the lake, when they're making a simple journey from one side to the other. One some of them had probably done hundreds and hundreds of times. A storm comes up. Well, that had happened plenty of times before. But what they're learning to do now is a new way of facing that storm. They'd done all the stuff they'd been taught to do by their fathers and uncles and other people who taught them how to fish and to navigate the lake, but now they were being taught something new. We've all been taught how to weather the storms of life, whether we know we've done it or we don't know we've done it, but all of us have been taught by somebody how to weather the storms. Perhaps it's stick your head in the sand. Perhaps that's the model that you've witnessed, is to pretend none of it is going on. Or get angry, or you'll have coping mechanisms. When we become Christians, we learn a new way. We learn to call upon our King. We see suffering as something that perhaps draws us closer to him, because he's the one, of course, who suffered. And that draws us ultimately more than any of us will ever, I'm sure, suffer. But it helps us understand what he did for us. So there will be storms. There will be trials and tribulations. There will be days which don't work very well compared to other days. Some of us will have suffering. But what this is saying to me is call on him sooner, and it then looks different.